Alrighty, welcome everybody. I am Stacy John-Emke with NutritionJobs.com, and we have a really fabulous guest today. I'm very excited about sharing with you that we have Holly LARSON of Holly LARSON Writes, and she's also the creator of the upcoming Dietitian Money Conference. And we decided, the two of us were talking a lot about money, talking a lot about salaries, and we thought, hey, let's actually have a conversation about dietitian salaries. And sort of behind the scenes, I put out the LinkedIn event notification for this with not very much notice. And so what ended up happening is I thought, oh, we're not going to have that many people being able to join us. And in actuality, we have a lot of people that were able to show up, and I'm super excited. And I know that we all want to have conversations about money. So welcome, Holly. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation today.
Thanks for having me. Let's talk about money.
I know. Well, I think, you bring that up. I mean, I think that's like a great introduction to having this conversation about money is having a conversation about money. Like, let's start at the base of it. I've been a dietitian for, like 30 plus years. And when I first started NutritionJobs, actually, it was making a lot of money. And I was embarrassed to tell other dietitians about it. I remember specifically going into a big conference and around a lot of dietitians who were asking me about this website that I was building out. With a lot of people had a lot of skepticism and were kind of like rolling their eyes, initially. I mean, this is, 20 plus years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was afraid to like share with them. There was two reasons I was doing it. One, that I thought it was a great service for dietitians. There was nothing else really like it online. And it was making a ton of money. But I was afraid to say the number two thing. I was afraid to say that. So,
why?
Tell me why.
I'm asking you, do you know why?
Because I know I was making more money than people I was talking to, and that felt embarrassing. I felt very self-conscious about that. And I felt that it was unfortunate that I was in this field where it was sort of known that we don't make a lot of money. And here I was making a lot of money, and I felt like an outlier. I didn't feel like I was in part of the pity party of salary conversations or lack of. So, it was a funny position to be in. And I think, so you have been a dietitian for a handful of years. How many years now, Holly?
Many? I've lost count.
Yeah. So when you first started your first job, or when you first started out going to conferences, or, working your first couple jobs, did you talk much about money in those positions with other dietitians?
No. And I think being on the opposite end of the spectrum of your introductory story of having way more student loan debt and a car payment and everything and no money, it's embarrassing to talk about because, again, you're an outlier. And we have so many, I think there's so many parallels between nutrition counseling and financial counseling in terms of all of our emotional connections to money and our identities around money, our beliefs that we grew up in our house. There are so many layers that influence how we think about money. And we didn't talk about it. And I knew when I had got my first job, I grew up in Ohio. I went to undergrad and grad school in Ohio, and then just wanted to get the heck out of Ohio. And so I moved to DC, and I was living on my brother's living room floor in his apartment until I could get my own first job and get out of there. So I wasn't in a position to say no to things. And I didn't have any training, like most of us. I didn't have any training about how to negotiate. It's a skill. It feels very emotional, but it's really should feel more like a skill. And I said, I finally got my first job offer. It was for a WIC clinic. And I said, I know that I need to negotiate. And my whole thing was, I got my offer, whatever atrocious number it was. And I said, is that negotiable?
Oh, you did?
She said no.
It's interesting
And that was the
you
whole
said,
conversation.
right? Okay.
Which, I mean, it's a little funny to look back on now. However, like that impacted my day-to-day living, that impacted like having that as a benchmark moving forward for other jobs. So we need to talk about money. It's hard. It's not that comfortable to talk about money, but the more that we can talk about it and have pay transparency, we can help move the needle forward to close the gender gap, to advocate for our own profession. And that's why I'm here.
So you said something interesting that you didn't talk, you had a very micro conversation about salary negotiation in that moment. You were one of, how many of us are there? 80,000, I don't know how many, what the number is now, 90,000, 100,000 dietitians that have been experiencing or have experienced that exact same situation. So it multiplied out, none of us were negotiating, none of us were talking about it, because it just, we didn't have the confidence, we didn't have the tools, we weren't mentored, we didn't have any path, we had no vocabulary around it, and we didn't see it. And so we couldn't do it, we couldn't say it. And then it just, multiplied out by all of us in one job, two jobs. So, 500,000 times this is happening. It happened. And so it's, we're not, I wouldn't blame us for like not being able to step up. I mean, I think that's why this is so important to have this conversation now. It's like, okay, so we kind of messed up for several decades. Let's change some of that. Let's move that forward. And so having this conversation and having different platforms to be able to, and have the tools to be able to improve our negotiation skills or to improve our own earning potential is everything. So I think that's good. So I think, a few things have changed in the last few years. In particular, I think being able to see dietitians working with other dietitians and having dietitians be on different platforms and talking about money. So I think I noticed this when we started to move towards seeing a lot of dietitians on social media, sharing their craft with their clients, and we got to peek in and see what they're doing for recipe development or working with the media. Or then we got to see dietitians working for other dietitians. And I think my first eye opener was at the Nutrition Entrepreneur Summit, where dietitians were helping other dietitians set up private practice, or teaching them how to do a paid cooking demo online, or teaching them how to write for media. And then they were teaching us, and then they went one step further to help promote their course or their business. And they showed us how much money they were making. We're like, oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Okay, let's talk about money. So I feel like we're all like sort of in this bubble of helping each other right now by being transparent, like what you just said, like being able to talk about it, to have this conversation, and then being able to move forward. So, okay, since we're talking about salaries, I'm going to fast forward to a couple slides that we have. Oh, this was interesting. I wanted to share this slide. So when we talk about salary, when I see the word salary, I think, oh, you're missing the whole equation. There's all the other compensation. But when I pulled my community of dietitians and nutrition professionals over on LinkedIn, over 800 people had their greatest aspect of compensation. So the whole package, the most compelling part is actually salary. So and time off. So time flexibility and salary. I think these other things, which I thought were important, were really not that important to other people. I mean, like really not important. Tuition or continuing education reimbursement, only 6% said that was important to them. They only had one answer. So that makes sense that they wouldn't want this to be, $5,000 a year and then be making $5 an hour, right? So totally makes sense in the way that I constructed this poll. But there it is, salary. That's like the most important thing. And so
it is. And it's hard to know unless you do the research of what is possible. And I think for so many of us dietitians, we start in clinical, and there are a lot of factors that influence what we are paid in clinical, and it has to do with reimbursement. And it's very complicated.
It's super complicated. I tried to look into it when I was an outpatient dietitian and got the idea that I should work with the IT department and code for these patients that were coming to me for this program, to code it such that we could get more reimbursement. And I'll tell you, that was super satisfying. It was very productive, but the amount of time that I did on my off hours to go up to IT and work through the coding and seeing then what the outcome was, but it's so complicated. And that's for multiple insurance companies. Everybody has a different negotiated rate with that particular hospital or with that contract company, depending on what it is. So it's layered upon layered. And I think you bring up a good point that that's clinical nutrition. And clinical nutrition is probably where the majority of us work in a traditional sense. So I think it's like 50 or 60% of the types of jobs that dietitians hold, whether it's part-time or full-time, they are often in clinical or traditional jobs like that. And so that sort of makes up the bulk of that. And what I should also say, I know I like to fixate on the word compensation, but I think that's also important when we're talking about what our salary is. And a lot of salary surveys just capture the wage. They just get the salary. That's what's reported, because oftentimes they can't put a dollar amount on the other part of the compensation. So sometimes they say it's like 1.3 or 1.5 times what your actual rate is. But I just wanted to show these different salary surveys that we can rely on. There's a lot of different other companies that like pay, I'm blanking on the name of them, but I've got a whole list of them in one of my blog articles. But so here's just two reputable sources for what the average dietitian salary is, and know that the majority of what comes into this number is from a clinical position. And so it's, $61,000 according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. And then according to the most recent salary compensation and benefit survey, it's about 72,000. So it's definitely, increasing. And again, that is mostly from clinical. I will also say about clinical salaries is that you've got the salary, but the compensation, all the other stuff like vacation time, paid time off, there's a lot of other perks that go into that. Matching 401k, which doesn't mean much to you maybe in the moment, but 10 years later it will make a huge impact, right? So there's a lot that goes into that. You probably have some other good sources for salaries. Let me see if I have.
I do. A newer one is actually Mint combined with Intuit. So they have salary rates based on tax returns for people who file their taxes through TurboTax.
Oh, that's a good one.
So you can look on there for your state, and then it will drill down to your city as well, which is interesting. And it will disclose how many tax returns, what's the data pool of what you're looking at.
That's a good one. I pulled, the reason I put those two articles up there was to show you where I just did a screenshot of part of this blog article where you can get some of those results. But there are a few other ones on the major aggregate job boards like Indeed or salary.com. Those all come from what the job listing is, right? And what's reported. It doesn't mean that that's what people are making. So having that other resource is really good, Holly. That's super helpful. The Academy also has a salary calculator based on that 2021 salary survey. So that was data collected in 2019, 2020, and then they report it in 21. So it's kind of old information in there, but you can do a salary, you can calculate based on your degree, based on your geography, based on certifications that you might have. Also like how much money, but the budget that you're responsible for. There's a few other categories. And of course the job title, very specific to dietitians. So they have all the different areas of focus. So that can be helpful as a baseline -1, I would say, like, you should just be able to go up from there. Or if you're offered something, like, don't take that number that lines up with the salary calculator. You should be able to bump up much higher than that. Um, so those are a couple of resources that you guys can check out. Um, Holly, you put this one here. Tell us more about this idea.
I did. It's a little smaller than I meant for it to be in the slide. But what it shows is that our field is mostly women. I think it's 92% women in the field. And speaking broadly, women are less comfortable negotiating overall, and especially younger women. So the graph shows by age 18 to 29 and 30 to 49, how comfortable are you asking for higher pay? And we get more comfortable as we get older and more practice, and that's great. But the more that we can start to teach some of those skills when we're younger, that snowballs and has an impact on our lifetime income. So too does inspiration, circling back to what you were talking about earlier, that I hope it's different now than when I was in school. We talked about dietitians work in hospitals and in kitchens and long-term care, and that's it. And dietitians work in so many places. And so learning how the different dietitians who are entrepreneurs, who are doing really cool things and being entrepreneurs and leading the way, and also talking about money, helps us to even believe something is possible. We're more likely to believe something is possible if we see someone else do it first. So that impacts our own beliefs and what we think is possible.
Yeah. This graph reminds me of, I don't have the reference, but it reminds me of when a woman is looking at a job description versus a man looking at the same job description, and they're both not 100% qualified for that position. The man will more likely just gun it, like just go for that position if they have, even 50% of what the qualifications are, versus a woman will wait until she has up to, I think it's like 80% of the qualifications. So I think that's a great lesson, and just like go for it. Right? It doesn't, be transparent, but also be able to toot your own horn. Maybe you are actually qualified. Maybe you're qualified enough, and because you don't want to go into a new job knowing everything about what to do, because that's not great for your own personal career growth. You're not going to learn. You won't have mentors. You won't, it's just not as satisfying. And I love the idea that a man might just like jump off the cliff and say, "Okay, I hope I can do it," like just go for it. And I love that. And that, it's just part of confidence, or part of being able to talk about yourself in terms of telling this great story, all of your career successes. And so that's, something that's very near and dear to my heart is, because I do all these resume reviews and career coaching for dietitians, and I'll look at their resume and then hear them talk. And we have a nice conversation, this nice dialogue, and actually more of a monologue on their part, where they tell me about what they've done in this particular job so that we could get a more sense about like what someone is doing, which is great. That's what I want it to be. And I always finish listening to them and going, holy cow, like, why isn't this on your resume? Why didn't you start with that? You've done this amazing thing. You started this program, you had this great outcome, you learned how to use this program, this computer program, you implemented this and that. Like, oh my gosh. So I think a lot of it comes down to also being able to share your career stories, keeping track of them. I'm like a big evangelist for the work journals, and keeping track of your successes so you don't forget about them, and then being able
so
to
important.
and be able to put them then into your resume and your LinkedIn profile. You forget about it, and then you see this job description that says, "Oh, we're looking for somebody to manage this whole program." You're like, "Oh, I'm not exactly qualified for that." It's actually you are.
You are. We think that we'll remember those things, and we don't. And the more that you can keep track of things in quantifiable ways, it's better.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a entrepreneur situation, in business, we as dietitians, we have to be able to quantify our impact. And that is what the Academy is working for, to advance our reimbursement, where we're reimbursed for and for what. And we have to participate. One of the slides, I have a magic wand. We'll get
Is that
to
next?
it.
Is
But
it next? Or should I go to
no
it?
one is coming in to save us. We have
Wait, what?
we have to be informed. We have to practice negotiating. We have to be informed about where we are and why. We can't just pretend we don't know something, or like act like it's just going to happen without us. We have to participate.
So I always went into that mindset that my profession is so much different than my friends' professions. And I live in San Francisco. There's a lot of tech, there's a lot of banking, there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of money. And I always separated myself. Oh, I'm different than you guys because I'm in healthcare and I take care of people. And I teach you how to eat better so that you can perform better, and then so you can make more money. It's like, so I always like separated myself out when I was working in traditional work, separated myself out. And that, you know, I don't talk about money. I'm not making very much money. I'm in a nurturing position. I'm in healthcare, right? So like, I
Yes.
always saw myself differently. And so therefore never thought about benchmarking my successes, never thought about, well, need to report this to the insurance companies or to the HR department, that we are, you know, we're moving someone's hemoglobin A1C down to a better number, or
Mhm.
we're causing, you know, decreases in blood pressure, and, you know, whatever it might be. So not used to benchmarking. And it wasn't until, you know, a few years into my career that we started doing that. The contract food service company I worked for started benchmarking because they needed to justify their existence at the hospital as well. So looking at our profession more with a business mind. Everybody can be in business, whether you have an MBA or an economics degree or whatever it is. Everybody should be thinking about money like someone who's in business, because we are in business. We're in the business of healthcare, or we're in the business of course creation, or whatever we're in the business of, and not be afraid to address that, or to have the mindset that we are not just about caring for people. Um, and so I'm looking back over at our chat, and it's really funny, like what people are saying. And one person said, I was always discouraged by my professional organization to the talking about money, to the point of that it was considered illegal practice to talk about money. And that is very interesting. And that lack of transparency, you know, like early on, for sure, me too. And then someone who might be like newer to the profession was able to say that, you know, one of their internship rotations, or they got to participate in a salary negotiation talk, and they got training. And so you can see, like, it's moving, it's changing. We're on this tide. Woo! Like, here we go. And but there's one other thing. Oh, it seems that most HR departments do not use that compensation survey when they're researching compensation, but rather other similar jobs in the area. And again, that goes back to the idea that if you're looking at Indeed, or you're looking at, there's a few other ones that where they list the salary, that's based on what that's what's in the job description, right? That's not what someone's actually making. So that's a really good point, and that's something that can be passed along to people. All right, let me go on to this one. Is this the? Oh yes. So did we already cover this?
We probably have mostly covered it, but it's just important. Pay transparency helps to advocate for marginalized groups.
Oh, yeah.
So the more that we can talk about money, women, there is still a pay gap. On average is 82 cents on a dollar, but the gap is bigger for Black and brown women versus white women. And the more that we can be transparent, that helps to reduce that gap. So the less that we negotiate, especially at the beginning, the less we're going to make over our whole career. But back to your point of we have to benchmark our existence, we have to advocate for what we're doing. So dietitian to dietitian, duh, we know that we help people to be healthier, to get through their hospital stay better, but that's not measurable us just chatting with each other. So it's research like this that benchmarks that when we identify patients who are malnourished and have an intervention with a dietitian, duh, they're better. And also it says in the end, I know this is tiny print, but it says yielded substantial economic benefits. So not only are the patients healthier, it's healthier to the budget of the hospital. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So this kind of research helps to move the needle forward, that we are not just a cost, which is how a lot of HR in hospitals view dietitians because of the limits of what they can reimburse, of what they can bill and get reimbursed for our services. We tend to be an expense versus other services. There's more things that you can bill for, even though we're all providing care. There's not a magic piggy bank. Every hospital has a budget, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit. So as we learn to understand, we understand this and learn about it and participate in being the squeaky wheel in our legislator, that helps to improve our income.
I'm going to highlight something in the bottom of this research is that, reduction in length of stay. We may not be able to this, I'm trying to think of like some other services like your respiratory therapy where you can, sell different, things and charge for that, that having a decreased length of stay, that's huge. That's huge for the bottom line in being able to identify and intervene with malnutrition diagnosis. So it is interesting. And that was always when I was in the hospital that we were an expense. Dietitians were an expense rather than being able to contribute to the bottom line.
The knowledge is power. For a job I got maybe 8 years ago, I was in private practice and didn't really know what I was doing because I wasn't making a ton of money. And this opportunity came kind of in my lap. It was a cool job. And the job offer was just so much more than I was making as a figuring it out entrepreneur who wasn't making a lot of money, that I was like, well, this is great. And I said yes without negotiating again. And then when I started doing research about what is my role and how does that compare to the market, it was very different. But by then my benchmark was where it was. And so it's really hard to move the needle more than a couple of percentage from where you started. So that's why your blog article and other resources that I'll share in terms of doing the research of what our average pay based on what you're doing, your job title, your education, your location, it really matters. This article came out at the beginning of this year that basically we're not taught how to negotiate still. Other professions are doing a better job of learning or providing education about negotiating. But it's a learnable skill. We can learn how to do it.
And have some practice doing it with each other or, getting trained on it. I have a course where we talk about how to do salary negotiation. I can share more about that later. But I think that's like this big aha moment. I'll share one quick story that I was offered a dream job position that I had been wanting for years and years and years. And then we sat down to, they told me, like what the hours were going to look like and what the salary was and what the full benefits package was. And this is my response. Okay. I didn't know that I could even negotiate for my salary. I thought that was for my sales friends, my friends who were in sales. I thought they were the ones that negotiate. I didn't even know that that is something that you do in healthcare. Again, thinking myself sort of separate from the rest of the work world because I was in healthcare. You don't negotiate, right?
the more that we can learn to advocate for ourselves and learn to participate in collective advocacy as a profession, that's how we're going to make progress.
Yeah. Whoops. Oh, sorry. That has words on it on my other screen, but it doesn't have words on this one. I
Oh,
don't know
why
what
is that showing up? But it says personal advocacy on one circle and collective advocacy in the other, and then progress in the middle.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for all of you guys. Anything else you want to say about that one? Besides
No, I
two
think
circles in a bit.
that's it.
There were some comments about wanting to get references for all of those salary articles, and we will put those into what I call the show notes when we put this out, and I'll send you guys a link to the recording of this, but that part will also include like all the links to everything. And so one of the reasons that I had Holly come on and chat with all of us is she has created, so she and I have been talking about dietitian salaries and money and stuff for quite a while. And she has embarked on creating a amazing conference called the Dietitian Money Conference. I'm super excited for her. She's been working really hard on curating a bunch of awesome speakers and to sort of set the stage or sort of get everybody pre-party, is that she is hosting a free mastermind class on dietitian salaries, current rates, and future potential. It will be on July 19th. It's free. And there's one CEU, which is awesome. That's another huge accomplishment that you did that too. It is next week. Anything else you want to say about this particular class?
Just that we're going to take a deeper dive into some of the whys, but of why we are getting paid the average amount that we're getting paid right now, what has influenced that to date, and that what we can do together to push that needle further.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited. I don't know what's inside this mastermind, so I'm joining as well, you guys. And I think it's going to be a really great introduction for the Dietitian Money Conference, and you can sign up for that pretty soon. Actually, you've got a wait list available, and then we'll roll into open enrollment, general enrollment. But save the date for August 1st through 4th, and you can register up through till the end of July. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll send you
I
guys.
have
Yeah, go
an
ahead.
early bird price. The early bird price is half off the regular price. So if you get on the wait list, you'll know the second the doors open for the conference. The conference is totally virtual. It's approved for 11 CEUs. And I'm just so pleased with the range of speakers and their topics. Stacey, do you want to mention what?
Yeah. So
is?
there's a bunch of great topics. I'm speaking about salary negotiation and how you can optimize your potential in that really awkward situation of when you're job interviewing, when you're super excited, and then the scary part comes of salary negotiation, and how to set yourself up for having this great conversation, having it be a nice relationship, and not feeling anxious and weird about money, because truth be told, the money's not coming out of someone's purse, right? Like you're not like asking somebody for money that is, taking away from their own kids. You're asking a company for money, and that's what the company is there for. So it's just getting used to that idea and not feeling awkward and embarrassed, but having the tools to, in addition to the mindset stuff, I offer all the tools about what you can do, how to talk, how to practice talking about it. What if this comes up, then this is how you respond, and sort of what you walk into the room with already, like in front of you, and how you can succeed at salary and compensation negotiation, or just conversations in general, but real tools that I will provide you with. But I'm just one of many speakers. I mean, there's some really great topics. I'm super excited about that.
There are 11 topics altogether, and it includes how to price digital goods, how to have passive income, how to have multiple income streams, whether you have a full-time traditional job or not, or you're an entrepreneur or you have a side hustle. We have information about how to budget if your income is variable. We have a session about how policy impacts your paycheck by two dietitians who understand this way more than I do. but it's a lot of great topics. And I'm hosting this conference not because I have everything figured out. I don't. Like, clearly I've shared stories of mistakes that I've made and learning along the way. But I also think it's important to just take action and have the conversations and do our best to learn and take imperfect action together. And that's how we create change. We can't expect anyone else to save us, and we can't expect to never talk about something and for it to change.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm very appreciative that you've worked so hard behind the scenes. You guys to put on a summit like this, like it's so much. It's not just curating amazing speakers. There's a lot that goes in behind the scenes, and you've done a ton of research that you can share with us. And we will all benefit from this conference, from the mastermind class, and just from having these conversations together. So again, do sign up. I will put in the show notes the link to where to find this. You can also go to her website. No, that's mine. Hang on. That's not interesting as much as, let me see, where did I put it? Oh, down here. So you can go to hollylarsonwrites.com and navigate over to the conference. I was going to just mention one thing about what I have up here is the job interview prep and confidence course that does include some salary negotiation, but I don't go into a lot of detail compared with what I did for the Holly's conference. And then always being able to talk about your successes on your resume to really illustrate and share the story of why you have these unique qualifications for a job. I also just want to put a plug in for YouTube. Please subscribe. There's Holly again. You guys know how to contact me. I'll just put that in there again. But Holly, thank you so much for joining us. I was really excited to talk with you. I feel really excited about money right now, and I hope everybody else does. And don't feel ashamed about talking about money or wanting to make more money in different ways. So, Holly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being a speaker at the conference.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Thank you guys all for joining. If you have any more questions for Holly or for myself, you can contact us directly, or you can send us a comment on all of our social media platforms. I look forward to seeing you guys at the conference. Okay, bye for now, everyone.